Jay, thank you so much for joining us. I know that a lot of the Living for Zachary family knows who you are because you've been such an integral part of our organization for so long. But for those who might be new to Living for Zachary and may not know you, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you got into CPR training?
Sure, no problem. I'm actually from the Chicago area, and I started with the fire service when I was very young. I decided I wanted to become an emergency medical technician. And as an EMT, one of the things we had to learn also was CPR. And our instructor for EMT was also the CPR instructor. So as we were talking, she talked about becoming an instructor. So I said, sure, sounds like a good idea. Maybe I can make a little cash on the side, have some little fun teaching people. So I did some teaching when I was up in the Chicago area, but 35 years ago, approximately, when I moved to Dallas, I said, let's see what we can do with this. So I started teaching at work at my full-time job, and then started teaching on the side, and the side business decided to take off, and I've built a nice business out of it. One of the things that happened during the side business and during this time is I got involved with a couple companies that I would teach for, that I would contract for to teach CPR. And one of those companies, Mark Gonzalez worked for, who's of course a member of the board. And he came to me when Living for Zachary first started and said, Jay, I've got this opportunity for you. And I will tell you that I think before he even finished that, I said, sign me up. The more I talked to him about Living for Zachary, the more I've gotten involved over the past 9+ years with Living for Zachary. I have become more of an advocate, and no matter whether I'm teaching a class for Living for Zachary or I'm teaching a class for Save a Life, my own personal company, Living for Zachary comes out.
How right now, when people are spending a lot of time with their loved ones in close quarters, how does CPR preparedness kind of change, and how should we be responding to emergencies given the change in our society right now?
One of the things that the American Heart Association has been doing over the course of the last couple of years is they've changed their curriculum a little, and I'm going to say a little, and I want to put a little caveat on that, and here's the reason why. All of the American Heart Association classes have always included breathing, and they still continue to include breathing. But a lot of people are scared to breathe on somebody they don't know, and especially now with what's going on, the pandemic, people don't want to put their lips on somebody else's lips. So what we've done, or what the American Heart Association did, is they started promoting hands-only CPR. So what we want you, the rescuer, to do, who may not want to give the breaths or may not be trained in how to give the breaths, is we want you to do compressions. High-quality CPR includes compressions and breathing. Quality CPR is compressions only. Something is better than nothing. Give the person a chance. That's my motto. And every time I teach, it's always give the person a chance. Without that chance, they have zero.
What are some of the most common questions that you hear regarding CPR, and lately, what has been something that you're hearing asked maybe more frequently than 2 months ago?
The number one question is, I thought I heard we don't do breathing anymore with CPR. Yes, we have it. Every class includes it. The problem is there's a lot of instructors that are just teaching compression on CPR, which is good, but they technically can't certify people. Right now, especially with the pandemic, the American Heart Association understands what's going on, and we've changed our teaching techniques a little. Number one, they've given an extension to all certification cards. So if you've got a card, you've got at least a 60-day extension on it. So you don't have to worry about getting recertified as quick. Number two, they've had us change some of the way we teach our classes. There's no more mouth-to-mouth in a class. We can only do mouth-to-mask. And you get the one-way valve when you're done. Therefore, we don't, all I have to do is clean the mask, and the mask hasn't been touched other than with your hands. I have everybody wear gloves to go through my class. If you can, during the non-times when you're breathing on the mask, they have an actual face mask on. Help protect you, help protect them, help protect everybody else in the class. We clean and sterilize the mannequins in between each person's use. So if I normally have two people on a mannequin, person A does it, I clean the mannequin, person B does it. I clean the mannequin, person A does it. So we're trying to abide by the social distancing, the keeping everything clean and sterilized to make sure that everybody is protected during this time.
We know that for some people, whether it be, family situation or just not being comfortable, some people just cannot become CPR certified right now. And maybe they don't know if they're going to be able to go to a class for some time. What do you recommend that people like that do to equip themselves if they're not super familiar with CPR, but they know that this is kind of a skill that they need while they're spending time at home with loved ones? What do you recommend?
So in case of an emergency, you can always call 911 and they will always walk you through how to do compression. But the key that I always teach in my classes is when they leave the class, people always say, well, I don't feel comfortable. I'm going to forget what I learned. And I tell them the following: you should do air CPR. And they're all looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I say, do you know what an air guitar is? And of course they come up and they start doing their air guitar. It's like air CPR. And I actually do air CPR for them. I just, in the middle of my class, when the mannequins aren't even there, I just walk up to the middle of, oh, there's somebody down on the ground. I'll tap, make sure it's safe, tap and shout, and I'll just walk through the steps. I walk through it, I talk through it. Because by doing that, it's going to inscribe it up in their brain, so recall will be a lot better.
How often would you say you hear about real life circumstances in which somebody might just freeze up and be unable to remember? Is that common to really lose your memory of CPR? Or do you find more often that people are able to, perform what they need to in order to help save a life?
About 12 to 15 years ago, at my full-time job, we have a full gym. And I was getting ready to play basketball at lunch. And I'm on one side of the curtain, and on the other side, they have some weights and aerobic area. And all of a sudden, one of the aerobics instructors comes over and says, Jay, they pull the curtain back and they point to the other end of the room. And all I see is this guy laying on the ground with one of the other instructors over them. So I knew what was going on. It took me a minute, and I was trained to regain my control, my composure, and say, wait, I have to go help this person. And the thing that you have to stress to these people, and that I try to stress in my classes, is without your help, they're going to die. Something is better than nothing. Yeah, you're going to freeze, but just try and regain. Try and get that recall coming. And that's why I talk about the air CPR and the practicing CPR, is so that their recall will be a lot better and hopefully a lot quicker during that frozen time.
And what a great testament to why we recertify people every 2 years, because that is knowledge that you need to continually be growing in yourself. And I would imagine that the more you become recertified, the more comfortable you become in these skills, because for most of us, hopefully, we're not going to have to use them, but we want to make sure that it's pretty fresh on our mind if we do.
And you talk about the 2-year certification, you're absolutely correct. That's why we have a 2-year certification. And we stress a lot. You don't have to wait 2 years to get recertified. You don't have to wait 2 years to ask for a class to practice or ask for some time to practice. I mean, with me, I will set up any type of class situation. If people want to get together and just do a practice session, yeah, we'll set something up. It's the best way to keep your skills honed and to be good at what you do.
I want to give you a scenario that, hopefully none of our listeners ever have to face, but for example, I want you to walk me through how someone should respond. So say this weekend we have 2 people at home, their spouses, they live in a house alone, and one spouse collapses. Obviously, most homes do not have AEDs. Obviously, right now, everyone is trying to be careful about not, getting in contact with a lot of outside people outside the home. What should that response be from the moment of collapse until professional help arrives?
So it's just walking through the steps of CPR. The first step is always make sure the scene is safe. What caused that person to go down? Did they get electrocuted? You don't want to touch them if they're laying on a live wire. So I always try and stress to the students, look around and make sure that it's safe for you to touch that victim. Once it's safe, you go up and with 2 hands, one on each shoulder, you just kind of pounce on, slap their shoulder. You want to slap hard enough so that they feel it. If I just go, hey, are you okay? That's not going to try and arouse them. You want to try and arouse them in case they are truly not unresponsive. You want to make sure that they are truly unresponsive. Once that happens, you call out. If somebody happens to be there to help you, call 911, and if available, get an AED. Then you send them and you tell them, call 911. You in the blue jacket and the black sweater, what I guess you're wearing today. You go call 911 and get the AED. And if there's no AED, the person may say there's no AED. I said, then call 911. But I stress, say it the same way each time so you'll remember to say it and you're not sitting there thinking, well, do I have them? Do I not have them? Do I have them? Always do things the same way. If no one is available, then you call 911, and if an AED is available, you get it. But just grab your cell phone, dial 911, put it on speaker. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to check to see if they're breathing. You look at their chest to see if there's any movement. And I tell people, lay your hand lightly on the chest. See if you feel any movement. Give it at least 5 seconds, no more than 10. If there's no movement, then you want to bare the chest. You want to rip the shirt off. You want to pull the shirt up, whatever it takes. And take the heel of one hand, put it in the center of the chest, right at the nipple line. The heel of your hand here goes right down the center of the breastbone. So and I'm trying to get back a little bit so you can see. Second hand goes on top. If you can interlock your fingers, pull your fingers up off the chest wall. Shoulders directly above your hands, elbows locked. Then you want to compress at least 2 inches, making sure the chest comes back to the neutral position each time, but your hand should never leave the chest wall. And you count 1 and 2 and 3, and you want to be, it's a quick pace. And you do that. If you're doing compression only CPR, you just continue on your compression. If you're going to try and do breathing, especially if it's a loved one, you want to do the breathing, you do 30 compressions, then you give your 2 breaths. You give a breath, let them exhale, give the second breath, immediately go back to compressions. No more than 10 seconds from the time you stop compression to the time you restart.
You touched on this earlier, and so I just want to make sure we touch on it again. I think often at Living for Zachary, I think we hear the sentiment, if there's nothing to actually shock that heart back, can I really make a difference? Is there any use in me stepping in? As a CPR instructor, what is your response to that?
My response to them is as follows, and yes, the AED is very beneficial being able to help this victim. But CPR alone still gives the person a fighting chance. If you do absolutely nothing, what are the chances? 0. If you give them CPR, if you do CPR on them, you've got a fighting chance to possibly get that heart going or going long enough until help can arrive, whether it be the AED, whether it be the paramedics, or another person that can help you out. So that's the answer that I give. Something's better than nothing. And I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Do something. It's better than nothing.
Absolutely true. Well, Jay, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise. I think now more than ever, you would probably agree that it is so important for us to be equipped with these things because we are all spending a lot of time with the people that we love and we may not have as many resources as previously. So I just thank you so much for sharing everything that you know with us.
And thank you for having me.